I did want to talk a little bit because prior to the summit, the big issue for the last several days has been the indictments.
Yeah.
All those bad Russians have been indicted. And I'm sure that now that Putin's and Trump are buddies, I'm sure Putin's going to round up those 12 Russians and send them over here for us to prosecute them. But I think the whole thing is looking to me more like a farce than anything else, or a political stunt. The whole thing was, to make the Russians look bad, but obviously, the fact that Mueller didn't present these indictments himself, he deferred to Rosenstein. It means that they don't really have a whole lot other than the politics. And it looks to me like what they did was they blamed the Russians, but they didn't blame the Republicans or Americans for dealing with them. And who wins on that, or think they're going to win? Oh, it's all going to be the neocons, because the Republicans win a little bit and the Democrats win a little bit. But both sides that don't like Russia, you can say, well, it was all Russia's fault. Yeah, we Americans weren't participating, but the Russians tried to tap into this. But there's a lot of confusion out there. I know you've read about this, but one thing that sort of fascinates me, because if it's true, if these experts that we've been reading are true, is the computers actually weren't hacked, which sounds so much more vicious and illegal. There were some that said they just logged in.
An indictment is not a conviction. An indictment doesn't even have to have any proof in it, which this indictment, if you read it, has no proof, has no evidence. I would just say one other thing on the indictments. Earlier this year, several companies were indicted by Mueller for being involved in hacking. One of them, Concord Management, did the unexpected. As you point out, they fought back and said, okay, let's have a trial. Show us what you've got. Let's do discovery. And Mueller had a panic attack and said, in several motions to delay, it's still pending. So it's one thing to make claims, it's another thing to prove them.
Anyway, that's where the problem came up. Something terrible happened, and it couldn't be. Maybe the people were shifting away from the conventional wisdom of the Democrats and the Republicans, which Hillary represented. Where Trump was despised by many Republican leaders, because he was taking this independent stand.
Yes, and my final point really is, let's consider the worst case scenario, and it certainly is a possibility. We have not ruled it out because we don't have the evidence. Let's say Vladimir Putin called up his military intelligence and say, listen, we got to hack into the DNC, we got to get this info out, we got to make sure Hillary doesn't get elected, she's so hawkish. Let's say that they did that. What did they do? They hacked into these servers, they released these documents. Even the intelligence community does not claim that these were falsified. These were actual documents. These are the things that the Hillary campaign was doing behind the scenes to work against democracy, to work against Bernie Sanders and work against him getting elected, and also the nefarious things that her campaign was doing. The information released was true information that we probably had a right to know. And compare that to when the U.S. does regime changes overseas. You talk about babies thrown from incubators. You talk about gassing his own people. You talk about Gaddafi giving Viagra to the troops. These are all lies. So there is a big difference, even if the worst case scenario is true. Don't forget, information released was true, and we do have a right to know both sides, what both sides are doing. Some of the dirty tricks of Trump, too. We have a right to know all these things.
As long as we have Putin and Trump talking, I think there's less likely that we are going to be arming, against each other. And certainly that was the case in the past, when talking did occur, even back in World War II with the communists of the Soviets and China. And yet, even in 1963, talking about, with Khrushchev during the Cuban crisis, they at least talked under, very tough times. So talking is beneficial. Let's hope that continues, and there is no reason not to have a little bit of optimism that we're moving in that direction, and I find that good. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.